So there's a lot of dangers associated with medications. Now, some people obviously need medications for various medical conditions, but one of the things that happens is that the brain often develops a certain dependency on these things. The brain releases its own chemicals, its own hormones, and a lot of times these medications stimulate the brain to produce excess levels of these. So when you go off of them suddenly, the brain doesn't return to an equilibrium. It dips a little bit below, or sometimes a lot below, where it needs to be in order for you to be able to function properly. And that sends a person into a kind of withdrawal that results in all types of erratic behaviors. And this is the case with illicit drugs, and it's also the case with legal drugs, especially a lot of drugs that are used to treat certain mental conditions. So there was a guy who was accused of firing 15 rounds into a crowd of people on Navy Pier. This was over the weekend, and apparently he was off of his medications that he was taking for PTSD. According to his defense attorney, a woman suffered a gunshot wound to her knee, but no other injuries were reported in the incident, so apparently he missed everybody, even though he fired 15 shots, except this woman, who he only shot in the leg. This occurred as a masquerade party was debarking the ship that was called the Spirit of Chicago charter boat early on Saturday. So the judge ordered a guy named Lorenzo to remain in custody during a detention hearing. So they didn't give him the the release that a lot of people are getting with the no cash bail. Security footage showed him and his girlfriend arriving at Navy Pier in a white Chevy Impala and entering the parking garage where the car's license plate was recorded. He got into an argument with his girlfriend during the cruise, and security officers had to separate them. The guards escorted him to the boat when it returned to the pier, and there was, quote, some shoving between them. Crawford apparently told security that he was going to his car and might come back. The video footage from the pier allegedly showed him return to the garage, hit another car as he drove out, and crash the entrance gate to avoid paying around 12:13 a.m. Other footage showed him driving up a staircase at the pier before getting out and walking toward the boat. Standing outside near Harry Carey's tavern, he fired 15 or 16 shots toward a crowd near the boat. However, the pier's extensive surveillance network failed to capture images of the shooting. A 31-year-old woman was shot. She did not have any interactions with him or his girlfriend at the time. And about 2 hours later, an Illinois State Police trooper received a CPD bulletin about the suspect's car and license plate number, and they pulled him over near the Dan Ryan and 33rd. And investigators found a 9mm handgun in his trunk, and preliminary tests indicate that it was consistent with the shell casings found in Navy Pier. Both of his hands allegedly tested positive for gunshot residue. So he told police that he remembered getting into an argument with security on the boat, but while he only had 3 drinks all evening, he, quote, blacked out and did not remember using the gun or getting it out of his car. He also made several statements that were incriminating, including, quote, if someone was hurt by me and you can prove it, then I'm guilty. So a private defense attorney had told the judge that he was honorably discharged from the Army after suffering a traumatic brain injury in 2019. On Saturday, he was out of the medication that he takes to treat PTSD. And what medication that is, I don't know. That would be an interesting detail. It would be pretty important to know because they can have different effects. You know, like I said, I told you guys I have a congenital heart defect that causes arrhythmias. And when I first started having this is when I was a teenager, they had completely misdiagnosed it and thought that I was having panic attacks and that was why my heart was racing like this. And so they had put me on Xanax. Of course, the Xanax didn't stop the arrhythmias because that wasn't the problem. So they just doubled the dose of Xanax. So I'm taking these double doses of Xanax. And then when you go off of that stuff, homie, that is no joke. Like, I don't recommend even trying it, not to, have fun or, go to a party and you put some of it in the drink. Or no, don't try that stuff, man, because you're eventually going to have to go off it. And when you go off it, like, you got a major problem. Like, that's not just like, okay, quitting, I wouldn't even compare it to like quitting alcohol or smoking or something else like that. It's probably way worse than that, man. So anyways, the reason that this incident possibly occurs because he was off his meds, they said, and his father was arrested this year on an attempted murder charge, a situation that is adding to the younger Crawford's stress. And given Navy Pier's comprehensive security system, the judge said, I think it is interesting to note that it was not captured on surveillance and this is alleged discharge of a firearm. So in the end, he concluded that detaining him was the only way that he could ensure the public's safety while his mental health condition remained untreated. He said there are people doing all sorts of things, both adults and kids, and it is alleged that you have fired this firearm 15 rounds, not one, not two, 15. So he's charged with aggravated battery of discharging a firearm. And so that is a very interesting case, man. And listen, everybody that's got these mental health conditions, if you can deal with it, without the meds, that's always better, because the meds do, it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen when you go on those things. And some of these things have a profound effect on behavior. Some of them turn a person into a completely different person. So if you can deal with it, right now it's better to just deal with it. You may think your life is going to be all hunky-dory after you, go on these medications and it's going to totally solve all your problems, but a lot of times it can make it exponentially worse and put you in a situation where now, like, you're in major trouble and potentially hurt somebody else. The psychiatry industry and, psychology, they are teamed up with the pharmaceutical industry. You got to remember this. This is a big business. It's like legal drug dealing in a lot of ways. And a lot of it, guys, there's billions of dollars in this, okay? Billions of dollars. I used to work in the schools, I told you guys. Prescribe, like, for example, Ritalin to kids that have, quote, ADHD on a level that's just, I would call it criminal. I wouldn't call it anything less than criminal. I mean, these are nothing but boys that just have a lot of energy, most of them. Now, there are some kids, okay, who actually have a disorder that, they need help with. Like, for example, there was this one kid, he couldn't even go to the bathroom because he would get distracted. He couldn't maintain focus long enough to even make it down the hall to the bathroom. He would get distracted so many times that, he would lose his train of thought on the way to the bathroom and he would end up wetting himself in the hall. See, that's an actual problem, that needs help. The vast majority of these kids that, they prescribe these drugs to, these very powerful drugs that are actually appetite suppressants that can often stunt kids' growth, they simply just have a lot of energy. And that that's not really the problem when these kids have no problem whatsoever concentrating on something that they're interested in. They claim that these kids have attention deficit disorder, so they need these medications. You give these kids something like a movie to watch or a video game that they like playing, they can play the thing for hours with their focus not even flinching for a second. So that it's not their brain. Okay, maybe it's the teacher's, skills at teaching. Maybe it's just the fact that he just doesn't like math. I mean, not too many kids do. Or, they're just full of energy. 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. I mean, for them to sit still in a classroom for 6 hours is like torture. Plus, you put it in their heads that there's something wrong with them. You call it a disorder, like there's something wrong with you. You need this, you need that. And that affects their, their view of themselves in a negative way. So I'm not a big fan of the psychiatry and the psychology industry at all. I think it's overall a negative. I don't think it's a positive. Some people, claim that they've been helped by it, but I think they do much more harm than good. And again, when a lot of these kids go off of these meds, it results in very erratic behaviors that end up damaging their own life and the lives of other people. So you guys let me know what you think, though, in the comment section, man. And thankfully, nobody was killed in this incident. It's your boy, Chicago News. I'm out.